minutes with the permission of the president and the clerk. You're not living deja vu. Our chaplain of the day, Father Thomas Crunkleton, our doctor of the day, Christina Greenheimer, and we'll proceed with the roll call. Chief Clerk.
Roll call for Legislative Day number 4, Friday, January 13th, 2023. Anderson? Excused. Baldwin? Here. Barlow? Beitman? Here. Boner? Here. Bouchard? Here. Brennan? Here. Case? Present. Cooper? Here. Dockstetter?
Here.
Ellis? French? Here. Murphy? Here. Guru? Here. Hicks? Here. Hutchings? Here. Ide? Here. Jones? Here. Shinsky? Here. Excused. Kolb? Here. Present. Kinski present. Kolb present. Landon? Here. Anderson present. Here. Larson? McEwen? Here. Nethercott? Here. Pappas? Rothfuss? Here. Salazar? Here. Schuler? Here. Scott? Here. Steinmetz? Here. Pappas? Excused. President Driscoll?
Here.
30 present, 1 excused.
Prayer by Father Tom Congleton of St. Mary's Cathedral.
Let us pray. Lord God, as the number of bills and resolutions introduced grow, and as the agenda of committees fill with legislation to be worked on, help us not to feel overwhelmed. Instead, let us remember the words of encouragement that St. Paul gave to the community in Corinth. God is able to make every grace abundant for you, so that in all things, always having all you need, you may have an abundance for every good work. The one who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will supply and multiply your seed and increase the harvest of your righteousness. You are being enriched in every way for all generosity, which through us produces thanksgiving to God. In the midst of all we are doing, let us therefore remember God's grace is being poured out abundantly upon us. For those of us who might be on the road this weekend, please grant safe travels. For those of us not able to rejoin family, ease the separation we feel and help us to stay connected. For all of us, grant us a refreshing and rejuvenating weekend so that we might be renewed to engage in next week's tasks. We ask this in all things, in your holy name, amen.
Real quickly, Father, got a coin from the Senate, and I hope you have a drawer full of them because you have helped us so much through the years. I do. Would you like to say a couple personal words just for fun? It's not a prayer.
It's always an honor to be up here to pray with you and both as a citizen of the state and as a clergyman. I do appreciate all that you do and the sacrifices that you make to be here and to serve us, the people of this state. So my gratitude to you. Thank you.
Prayers and hugs to Father Tom. Senator Ide, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
the reading clerk read the Journal Committee report?
Mr. President, your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of January 12, 2023 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Senator Larson, Chairman.
Are there any objections? There being none, the report is adopted. You're on a roll, Senator Larson. We all agree with you. Doctor for the day is Christina Beringer. I hope I'm doing it right. Is she here? Come on up and say hi. Hey. Is Beringer correct for how to pronounce your name? Beringer. Thank you. I apologize for butchering things. Today in Wyoming history, Wyatt Earp dies in Los Angeles at the age of 80, best known for the famous gunfight at the OK Corral. Our family thinks he's best known. My three greats grandfather drew a gun on him in Dodge City in 1887 and was pistol whipped by Doc Holliday and went to jail. So, reminder to pay your $185 to the Senate Courtesy Fund for lunches if you opted in. Introduction, reading, and reference of bills. Senate File 101, first reading of the bill.
Senate File 101, Wyoming Legal Tender Act Amendments, sponsored by Senator Ide.
Senate File 101 is referred to Committee Number 3, Revenue. Senate File 103, first reading of the bill.
Senate File 103, Sales Tax Exemption, State Legislators, sponsored by Senator Steinmetz.
Senate File 103 is referred to Committee Number 3, Revenue. Senate File 104, first reading of the bill.
Senate File 104, Property Tax Mill Levy Adjustment, sponsored by Senator Steinmetz.
Senate File 104 is referred to Committee Number 3, Revenue. Senate File 102, first reading of the bill.
Senate File 102, Food Freedom Act Amendments, sponsored by Senator Salazar.
Senate File 102 is referred to Committee Number 5, Agriculture. Senate File 106, first reading of the bill.
Senate File 106, 2023 Large Project Funding, sponsored by the Lateral Resource Funding Committee.
Senate File 106 is referred to Committee 6, Travel. Senate File 105, first reading of the bill.
Senate File 105, Utilities, Point of Consumption and Allocation Agreements, sponsored by Senator Steinmetz.
Senate File 105 is referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Senate Joint Resolution Number 4, first reading of, first reading of Senate Joint Resolution.
Senate Joint Resolution Number 4, Phasing Out New Electric Vehicle Sales by 2035, sponsored by Senator Anderson.
Senate Joint Resolution 4 is referred to Committee Number 9, Minutes. Senator Boner, do you want to bring a child up real quick and tell us a name? Bring him on the floor, we can do this. Okay, we're going to mute the applause so we don't wake him up, but we want a name. You're on.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. This is little Martin Boner. He's about a year and a half old. So we had, just had unexpected circumstances here this morning. So here he is with me while we have some reinforcements coming down from Commerce County. So appreciate this part of being a citizen legislature and appreciate your indulgence, Mr. President. And I would say let's welcome them, but let's just be a nice little quiet welcome. That'd be great. Thank you.
Welcome to a future senator. Thank you, Senator Boner. Reports from standing committees.
January 12, 2023. Mr. President, your committee number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred Senate File 42, Taxation of Cigars, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Beitman, French, Ide, McEwen, and Pappas. Senator Beitman, Chairman. February 12, 2023, Mr. President, your committee number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred Senate File 63, Tax Administration Revisions, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Beitman, French, Ide, McEwen, and Pappas. Senator Beitman, Chairman. January 13, 2023. Mr. President, your committee number 4, Education, to whom was referred Senate File 47, Education, Repeal of Immunity for Corporal Discipline. Respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Beitman, Brennan, Rothfuss, Scott, and Steinmetz. Senator Scott, Chairman.
Thank you, Randy. Bills on second reading. So I'll once again go through, Senator Beitman. Yeah, I'm working on finding you, sorry.
Privilege of the floor, Mr. President.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, didn't want to get ahead of you. Ladies and gentlemen, hopefully he's still up there. Yes, he is. I can't see behind me, but behind me in the east balcony is our Tongue River Middle School's principal, Mr. Jeff Jones, PhD. He's down here. He made the trek last night to come down as a citizen to testify on a bill here in education this morning, the 340-mile treacherous snowy drive, and now he's stuck here because the roads are closed. But I invited him. He did a great job in committee this morning on the corporal punishment bill that will be coming before you. He's done a lot of research on it. And just please welcome him. He's a great man, a great principal for my daughters, and give him a warm Senate welcome.
Welcome, Mr. Jones. Thank you, Senator Beitman. It's always nice to recognize our educators. Appreciate it. So second reading one more time for everybody. You can talk 2 times on the bill and 2 times on the amendment if you need for 5 minutes. When the sponsor spoke for their second time, it's done. So if you've got comments to make, they're going to get up, you're there. So Senate File 2, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 2, Wyoming Telecommunications Act, sunset date.
Senate File 2 have been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, yesterday I made a statement on this bill and I have been corrected. The good chairman of corporations reached out to the PSC for us and I stand corrected. The bill does not have to do with the budget footnote. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'll finish reading, we can do some more. Senate File 2 haven't been read 2 separate times. The question is, bill be read a third time. Hearing no objections, so ordered. Senate File 5, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 5, Medical Malpractice Statutory Update.
Senate File 5 haven't been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 6, second reading of the bill of the Senate file.
Senate File 6, Insurance Rebating Modernization.
Senate File 6 haven't been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 16, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 16, State Employee Moving Expenses.
There is an amendment.
Senate File 16, second reading amendment number 1, page 2, line 13, after.
Senator Cole.
Thank you, Mr. President. The following changes are in this amendment, page 2, line 13.
Could you move the amendment, please?
Oh, would you please move, could you move the amendment number 1, please? I move standing committee amendment, or committee second reading amendment number 1.
Perfect, thank you. Now,
Senate File 16. The amendment reads as follows. Page 2, line 13. After allowed, insert the. Page 2, line 14, delete rules. Page 2, line 18. After position, insert. This paragraph shall only apply only to employees of the Department of Transportation. And this was to clarify some of the questions of the other day of who would this affect. And that was the purpose for this amendment, a little bit of cleanup and then to clarify Department of Transportation only. I'll stand for questions. Mr. President.
thank you, Senator Cole. Questions? Seeing none. Question on the amendment. We are voting on Senate File 16, second reading amendment number 1. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Senate File 16, second amendment, reading number 1 has passed. We are back on the bill. Senate File 16, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 19, second reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 19, Highway Safety Child Restraints.
Senate File 19, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 20, second reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 20, Driver's License and ID Card Photo Quality.
Senate File 20, Senator Pappas.
Mr. President, we do have a second reading amendment. Could I have it read in, please?
On 20? Okay, there is. Excuse me, I'm very sorry.
Senate File 20, second reading amendment number 1, page 2 after line 15 in.
Senator Pappas, I
Thank you, Mr.
apologize, I got ahead of you.
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 20 and ask for your favorable consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, all this does is corrects the misspelling that we saw during first reading. We delete the word read and it becomes real. So it'll be real ID instead of read ID. Thank you, Mr. President.
Question being called. We're voting on Senate File 20, second reading amendment number 1. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Second reading amendment number 1 on Senate File 20 has passed. We are back on the bill. Senate File 20 have been read 2 separate times. The question is, so bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 58, second reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 58, Sutton Archaeological Site Administration.
There is an amendment. Can we have the amendment read in, please?
Senate File 58, second reading amendment number 1, page 2, line 14, delete.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 58 and would ask for this body's favorable consideration. Senators, we had a good discussion on this bill yesterday, which would create the Sutton Archaeological Site. There was some question about whether or not the State Parks Department could start building fences to protect this site immediately if the act took effect on July 1st. I reached out to them and they said they wouldn't have the authority unless we made this act effective immediately. So that's what this would do, Mr. President. If we pass this bill the second the governor signs it, the State Parks Department can start constructing fences and installing cameras to protect the archaeological site. Thanks.
Question. Seeing none, question being called. We're voting on Senate File 58, second reading amendment number 1. All in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion is second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 58 is passed. We're back on the bill. Senate File 58 having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 59, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 59, State Parks Account Agency Expenditure Authority.
Senate File 59 having been read two separate times, the question is, the bill be read a third time. Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 73, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 73, Lawful Fences.
Senate File 73 having been read two times, Senator Cole, excuse me, thank you. My apologies.
Mr. President, I would ask for the bill to be laid back one day.
Without objection, it is so ordered. Thank you. Correct way to get my attention, guys. Thank you. Senate File 77, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 77, Public Works Apprenticeship Programs Repeal.
Senate File 77 having been read two separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, so ordered. Senate File 78, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 78, Apprenticeship and Job Training Promotion in Schools.
There is an amendment. Did we have it read in?
Senate File 78, second reading amendment number 1, corrected copy, page 4, line 10 after.
Senator Scott.
Mr. President, I move adoption of this amendment. Mr. President, this amendment is intended to tighten this up just a little bit. If you recall the discussion Committee of the Whole yesterday, this is a product of that. It does two things in the provision where they've got to provide school credit for these apprenticeship programs. It says appropriate, and that would now say appropriate school credit, gives the school board latitude to say how much credit is given. That's all that does. The second line, page 4, line 12, they're mandating that they have these courses, and this adds that the courses have to comply with the guidelines established pursuant to subparagraph A of this paragraph right above there, so that if somebody comes in with a program that doesn't comply, the school board has discretion to say, no, you have to comply with those guidelines in order to get credit. Mr. President, I hope this is non-controversial and just tightens it up so we don't have unintended consequences.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the amendment is perfectly consistent with the original intent of the legislation. I think it's just clarifying language. It's a friendly amendment. Urge the body to vote aye.
Senator Doc Slater.
Just was going to say that as chairman. Friendly amendment.
Question being called. We're voting on Senate File 78, second reading amendment number 1. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Senate File 78, second reading amendment number 1 has passed. We are back on the bill. Senate File 78, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall it be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, do we have a consent list?
Mr. President, we do have a consent list. But Mr. President, before we do this, I would like to explain, particularly for the new members here, because this is the first time we have done third reading, and a refresher for some of us older members that sometimes have a tendency to forget. So when we get to the third reading, what you will do is you'll be voting on the entire list. You'll cast one vote for the consent list. If you, as a member of the Senate, anybody can have anything removed off of that consent list. So once we go through the consent list,
President will ask, is there anybody would like anything removed? At that point in time, if you want to talk on a bill on third reading, then you would ask to have that removed. Okay, so that's the process for that. So the next one that we do with in third reading is you're gonna vote on the entire list. You may have a bill on there that you really don't like, that you want to vote no on, and the procedure for that for the new members is then the chief clerk will call the roll, and then it'll say, anybody wants to change your vote. At that point in time, you will stand up behind here. The clerk will look out here and recognize you, and at that point in time, if you voted yes on the consent list, you would say, when we get to Senate File X, aye to no. You just change your vote on that individual bill on that. So I'm getting some blank looks out there, but just so, again, you're gonna be voting on the entire consent list. If there's a bill on there that you want to vote no on, the way to do that is after we go through the entire consent list, there's roll call. You will stand up and be recognized by the chief clerk, and you will say, Hicks, aye to no, at that point in time. That is your final vote. Senator Scott, Mr. President, I believe.
Senator Scott.
Mr. President, I'd like to just amplify that for the benefit of all the members, remembering how it works. After we vote on the consent list, the chief clerk will ask for any changes and do it by bill. So she'll say, any changes on Senate File 4, any changes on Senate File 11. And it's when she calls that particular Senate file, it's the time that you stand up to change your vote if you're going to.
Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
Mr. President, thank you, Senator Scott, for that addition. So, Mr. President, I move third reading consent list, which has the following bills. Senate File 4, North American Industry Classification System Amendments. Senate File 11, Cancer Early Detection Amendments. Senate File 29, Brucellosis Management Updates. Senate File 48, Education Suspensions and Expulsion Model Policies. Senate File 49, Safe School and Climate Act Amendments. Senate File 57, State-Held Drainage District Bonds. And Senate Joint Resolution Number 1, amending Wyoming's Act of Admission for leases and earnings.
Thank you, Majority Floor Leader Hicks, and thank you for the good explanation. Would anyone like any bills removed from the list? So if any of you want to talk about any of them this time, it's your last chance. Seeing none. Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass the Senate? Senate File 4, North American Industry Classification System Amendments. Senate File 11, Cancer Early Detection Amendments. Senate File 29, Brucellosis Management Updates. Senate File 48, Education, Suspension and Expulsion Model Policy. Senate File 49, Safe School and Climate Act Amendments. Senate File 57, State-Held Drainage District Bonds. Senate Journal 1, amending Wyoming's Act of Admission for leases and earnings. The chief clerk will call the roll.
On the consent list, Anderson? No. No. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks?
Aye.
Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski?
Aye.
Aye. Colt? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. On the consent list, 30 ayes, 1 no. Senate File 4, are there any changes? Anderson?
Oh, no to aye.
No to aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 4, 31 aye. Senate File 11, are there any changes? Scott?
No.
Scott, no.
Anderson, aye to no.
Anderson,
No to aye, excuse me.
no to aye. Closing vote. Hutchings? Aye to no. Closing vote. Larson? Aye to no. French? Aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 11, 27 aye, 4 no. Senate File 29, are there any changes?
Anderson, no to aye.
No to aye. Closing vote. Closing.
Just so you learn.
Vote closed. Senate File 29, 31 aye. Senate File 48, are there any changes?
Anderson, no to aye.
Anderson, no to aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 48, 31 aye. Senate File 49, are there any changes? Larson? Aye to no. Anderson?
Anderson, no to aye.
No to aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 49, 30 aye, 1 no. Senate File 57, are there any changes? Anderson? No to aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 57, 31 aye. Senate Joint Resolution 1, are there any changes? Anderson? No to aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate Joint Resolution Number 1, 31 aye.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 4, North American Industry Classification System Amendments, Senate File 11, Cancer Early Detection Amendments, Senate File 29, brucellosis management updates. Senate File 48, education, suspension and expulsion model policies. Senate File 49, Safe School and Climate Act amendments. Senate File 57, state-held drainage district bonds. And Senate Journal 1, amending Wyoming's Act of Admission for leases and earnings, have passed the Senate. We will stand at ease to the sound of the, excuse me, Senator Scott.
Mr. President, pursuant to rules, I rise to explain my vote on Senate File 11, Cancer Early Detection Amendments Bill. Mr. President, I voted no on that bill. I'm very much a supporter of the program, but I'm not satisfied with the way it's been administered. I think we should be much more aggressive than we have been, because potentially the early detection is an effective way to prevent cancer deaths, and I'm not satisfied that the health department has promoted it adequately, and I'm afraid that the program we're pretending to do good, and we're doing good very ineffectively and on a minor degree. So it's the best way I could figure to try to send a message to them that they really need to be more aggressive about this program. And Mr. President, I didn't want to speak against it because I don't want to defeat the bill, but I do want to register a protest of the way it's being administered.
Thank you, Senator Scott. So we're going to stand at ease to the sound of the gavel for 10 minutes. I don't have time, so we'll just stand at ease so we can get set up for committee of the whole. Is that enough time, Ellen? Okay, so 10 minutes, folks.
Check, 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 check. Check, 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 check. Check, check.
Reports from standing committees.
January 12, 2023. Mr. President, your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 74, Slow-Moving Vehicles Amendments, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators French, Hicks, Kolb, and Steinmetz. No, Senator Ide. Senator Steinmetz, Chairman. January 13, 2023, Mr. President, your committee number 10, the Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred Senate File 9, Medicaid Coverage Licensed Pharmacist, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Barlow, and Dockstader. No, Senator Hutchings. Excused, Senator Bouchard. Senator Baldwin, Chairman. January 13, 2023, Mr. President, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom was referred Senate File 7, Definition of Opiate Antagonist Amendment, respectfully reports back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass with the following amendment. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Barlow, Dockstader, and Hutchings. Excused, Senator Bouchard. Senator Baldwin, Chairman. January 13, 2023, Mr. President, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred Senate File 37, Podiatry Medical Services Medicaid, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Barlow, Dockstader. No, Senator Hutchings. Excused, Senator Bouchard. Senator Baldwin, Chairman.
Thank you, Randy. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, we're at that order of business, consideration of bills on general file.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion is passed. The Honorable Senator Schuler, please come take control.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Okay, super. I do.
Madam Chairman,
Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
yeah, Madam Chairman, just to give everybody a preview of what we're going to do today, you've got 3 bills that are up on the board, Senate File 42, 63, and 47. There'll be some that are coming up now. I want to go ahead and let you know what those are in order, so you chairman and those presenting the bills know what'll be coming up. So the next one is Senate File number 9 that came out of Labor Committee. So that will be the next one. The next one is Senate File 74 out of the Agricultural Committee. Next one is Senate File 7, again out of Labor. The next one is Senate File 32. And the plan is today is to work as far down that list as we possibly can get until noon. And at noon, we're going to adjourn until next Monday.
Do I have what?
So let's see what we can get done today, but that's the list. We're going to work down there, but when we get to noon, we're going to stop. If we get done before that, you get out a little earlier than noon. But Madam Chairman, that's the plan for today.
Thank you, Majority Floor Leader. I was hoping we only had 3 bills, so guess that's not happening. All right, the Committee of the Whole will please come to order. The first bill for our consideration is Senate File 42. Will the reading clerk read the bill?
Senate File 42, Taxation of Cigars, sponsored by the Revenue Committee, an act relating to tobacco taxes. It was referred to Committee number 3, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Beitman, French, Ide, McEwen, and Pappas. Senator Beitman, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Beitman?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rise and report, it do so with the favorable recommendation of Senate File 42. And with an explanation of the bill and the amendment, I'll turn it over to the great Senator Pappas.
Senator Pappas?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This short little bill is a product of your Joint Revenue Committee from the last interim. This bill seeks to make parity the way we tax and at the time we tax cigars as we do all other tobacco products. Just for a little background, cigarette taxes and moist snuff is taxed at the point of retail sales, but premium cigars are taxed at wholesale, and there's an inherent problem with that. Taxing at wholesale, especially a cigar, an upscale cigar, it could stay in the inventory for a long time. You could and trying to track that product. Also, that product has a greater chance of either not being sold or degrading over time before it's sold. So one provision of this bill changes the taxation period to be at the point of sale rather than wholesale. And then the other item, you'll see an amendment that we will address here, but in fact, maybe you ought to address that first. Could I have the amendment read in, please?
Yes, sir.
Senate File 42, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 1, line 2, delete.
Okay, I'm just going to address that and we'll dispense of the amendment. So I'd like to move amendment Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 42 and address that. Basically, the amendment deletes the word premium cigar, okay? And it creates all cigars the same. The issue with premium cigar is that unlike the other tobacco products, we do not tax it based on quality. So if you look at a pack of cigarettes, which is taxed at 60 cents a pack, it doesn't matter what the quality of the cigar is, or a cigarette is. Every cigarette is taxed at the same rate. Same way with moist snuff, okay? It's taxed by the ounce, 60 cents an ounce. And so the intent here is to do the same thing with the cigar. So the amendment simply deletes premium cigar and including the definition of premium cigar. That was added in the interim committee. There was no definition before. And frankly, we decided we didn't want to go down that road because actually moist snuff, cigarettes, cigars, they're not defined in statute anywhere. They're defined in rules and regulations. So we thought we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. We're going to get rid of the definition of premium cigar. So that's all that amendment does. So I'll take questions on the amendment.
Discussion on the amendment? Okay, question's been called. All those in favor of Senator Beitman's Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No. Point of order. That was my amendment.
That was yours. Okay. What I have up here says Beitman, but I'll rephrase that. All those in favor of Senator Pappas's Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. That Standing Committee Number 1 to Senate File 42 has been adopted.
Okay.
Back on the bill?
Back on the bill. Now, two things, as I mentioned. The first thing was that we were taxing this bill, or we're taxing the cigars now at the point of sale. You'll see that on page 4, line 12 through 14, provided that the tax on cigars shall be due upon the sale of the cigar. So that's one of the main provisions. And the second provision is a cap on that tax. The cap on that tax will be basically 30 cents, depending on the price of the cigar. The rate of tax is on a retail price of cigar, you'll see on page 3, lines 3 through 3 and 4 is 10% of the retail price. The intent, again, is to price a cigar or tax the cigar on the unit and then set a cap because some cigars, wholesale price could be $10 a cigar, or retail price could be $20 a cigar, or it could be a $1.50. So the intent here is to make a single tax for the cigar based on the unit, based on the, so much for a cigar. Doesn't matter whether it's a $100 cigar or if it's a dollar stick. So that was it. The cap was set at 10%. So basically, the 30 cents would be, if you figured that out at 10%, it would be $1.50, right? Any cigar that was sold for $1.50 or more would be capped at a 30-cent taxation rate. So if you sold it for $10, still be a 30-cent tax. Right now, if you sold it at $10 at 10%, it would be a $2 tax. And so it was unfair that just because of the quality of the cigar, it was taxed at a higher rate. And the intent, again, is to try to bring uniformity, since we're not taxing quality on or the price on either snuff or cigarettes. We're taxing the unit, either a pack of cigarettes or an ounce of snuff. So now we're taxing just the cigar, and the rate is, the cap is going to be at 30 cents. So I'll take any questions if the body has any.
Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
Madam Chairman, with the adoption of the standing committee amendment that now creates the flat tax versus the other tax, I'm just wondering, was there any discussion as to what the fiscal note, what's the fiscal impact? Is it positive, negative? Did it change? And then also, the way I understand it, that tax also applies to snuff and other tobacco projects. Does this change that tax on those two or not?
Senator McEwen.
I just want to answer the majority floor leader's questions. No, it does not apply to any other product. It is a 10% with a 30-cent cap, and it's just cigars. They're working up the change on the fiscal note. It does drop the revenue a little bit. Thank you.
Senator Guru.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question, and while I just want to say I think it's high time that the Wyoming Senate stand up and take a good, meaningful discussion about raising taxes, and to have this discussion in full-throated form. I have a question. This is a revenue bill, and I'm wondering, shouldn't it be left over to the House based on the discussion we had yesterday? I look to my friend from Bates Creek to help enlighten me on that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oops, wrong one. Where are you? Gosh, I'm having a hard time finding you all. There we go. Actually, Senator Ellis was up first, Senator Scott, and then I'll call on you. Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question. I was wondering what the discussion was on, first of all, do we do this for any other product that someone buys wholesale and then later sells for retail? I'm curious to know specifically if we're going to start seeing this when people are engaged in buying and selling high-end bottles of alcohol, certain spirits. I know those can be very expensive too. What happens when those sit on shelves for years or longer? And then what happens, again, in that light, when you might have someone who's in the business of selling high-end cigars, they have this inventory that's in their stock, and for whatever reason, they go out of business. I'm just wondering what happens to those cigarettes those high-end cigars that they've had in their inventory for years, how that's handled and with taxation, for taxation purposes.
Senator Scott?
Madam Chairman, question been raised on it is a proper bill for the Senate. As you look at the fiscal note, it appears to be a reduction in revenue, so it's not a revenue raiser. And I understand that the amendment has a little more of that same effect. And for those reasons, I'm going to oppose the bill. And this has been my general policy for years. The tobacco is the substance is perhaps the most harmful of the lawful substances for anybody to use in terms of health. It has well-proven risks of causing cancer, heart disease, and any number of other medical ailments. It doesn't have, as far as I know, any redeeming qualities that way. And it is clear that taxing it does gradually reduce the usage, which reduces the cost that the state spends on the Medicaid program, amongst others. But it is raising tobacco taxes is a good public health measure. Cutting them is a bad public health measure. It'd be better. I'm agnostic on the other things this bill does, but it'd be better to do it in the House and do it with an increase in the taxation rather than do it here where it has to be a cut in the reduction in the taxes. And because it is cut in the taxes, Madam Chairman, I'm going to vote no on the bill.
Senator Pappas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to address a couple of the questions that I heard, regarding the alcohol. Well, alcohol is taxed at a completely different location. I mean, it's taxed by the state before it goes to the person that's going to be selling it. So you can't. That's apples and oranges. And frankly, this bill will put more consistency because the cigars will be taxed at the point of sale, just like all other products, whether it's vaping products, whether it's snuff, or whether it's cigarettes. It'll be taxed at the point of sale. So I think that's best to keep it consistent. Regarding the harmful effects of tobacco, yes, we had testimony that there are harmful effects of tobacco usage. We also had testimony that typically the demographic smoking these cigars are people who are 35 and older. And cigar smokers, especially premium cigar smokers, we don't have that definition now, but they're going to pay whatever tax we put on it. And granted, we are going to lose some tax revenue with this bill, but this was brought actually by our folks in the business. It's actually for them a competitive issue. When we are allowing online sales, we do allow online sales, and if we're taxing at wholesale, those online people can buy that product at very, very low prices because they're huge online sellers. And so it's a disadvantage to our local businesses. We had testimony from local businesses, one especially from the good senator from Natrona County. One of his constituents testified for this, in favor of this. It's going to help his business. I think this is really a small business bill more than anything. Yes, we're going to lose some taxation money, but we're going to be more consistent about taxing tobacco products. Now, it was brought up by one of our great committee members that maybe our entire way of taxing tobacco products needs to be looked at and overhauled, but we can't do that with this bill. But this bill at least will provide consistency in allowing for point of sale taxation, and will allow a cap on a product so that it's not taxed based on its quality, it's taxed on its unit. Okay?
Senator Beitman?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would just like to add to that, this debate during committee wasn't about whether smoking and tobacco is good or bad. It's a tax policy issue. And looking at our current policy, we have some pretty wide discrepancies in how certain classes are taxed as opposed to others at what rate. And so right now, these cigars we're talking about are in a different bucket, and they're taxed at the full excise rate of 20%. That's a lot. And it puts these small shops in a competitive disadvantage. And it's the goal of the committee, and hopefully the goal of the legislature, to take a policy look at our tax code in general and how we make taxes fair as possible and equitable as possible. So that's kind of the driving impetus behind this bill, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Senator Ide?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was on this committee yesterday. I want to speak in favor of this bill. I'm one of the ones that thinks it probably didn't go far enough as far as lowering taxes. And the good senator from our home county of Natrona, tobacco use is a matter of personal responsibility. And I'm in favor of this bill, and I think it does need restructured, like good Senator mentioned earlier, that it's too complicated. We just need something flat all the way through all of tobacco, and not play games with all the special carve-outs for different products. Thank you.
Senator Bouchard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to ask if there was any questions about the federal money on large cigars. That's what how the federal government taxes these cigars. There is one state that went to zero tax on large cigars. And I think a lot of the reason they did that is because if you look at 2009, it was a 20% tax, federal excise tax, and they bumped it up in April 2009 to 52%. And so I know a lot of the federal money that comes into states happens because, we get to share in that a lot of people probably buy these large cigars. I want to know if there's a discussion of that federal money that comes back to Wyoming that possibly people in Wyoming didn't even buy those cigars, but we're benefiting from that rather large excessive tax at the federal level. And I certainly, just based on that alone, I look at the rather large red state that reduced it to zero. I think we should follow along those lines, because I think the excessive tax is already there.
Senator Case?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I think you might recall from the interim work that we did that we had a discussion about the internet sales aspect of this, and I think that's brought up. And we explored with the Department of Revenue about the possibility of Wyoming taxing internet sales, following along the lines of the sales. If you buy liquor from outside and have it shipped, you have to pay the state tax. And if the very large company that has it's a primo box that comes to your house, you see the brown trucks bring those primo boxes to everybody. We now collect sales tax on those, which was a great thing during the pandemic because it really made the difference there for those early months. But we discussed at the time with the director of the excise tax division at the Department of Revenue about the possibility that Wyoming could collect the sales, Wyoming jurisdictional sales on internet purchases of cigars. And they definitely said that that was a possibility. I've done a little bit of research just while we're here, and certainly some states have have passed legislation to do that. I suspect it'd be favorably received along the same lines that we did with our friends in South Dakota when we went to the Supreme Court and they ruled in our favor on the sales taxes. So I don't know about the internet competition being a bugaboo for this thing, and really what we should probably be doing is exerting jurisdiction on taxation of internet tobacco products shipped to Wyoming. I didn't. It's not an affordability issue on these cigars. I guarantee you that. If I've probably smoked a couple of $10 cigars, and I think if you're going to smoke a $10 cigar, you can pay the taxes.
Further discussion? Oh, sorry. Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, one of the things I want to note, I've served on Revenue Committee and I've served on Labor and Health Committee. Tobacco users are subsidized by those of us who do not smoke to the tune of in excess $200 million per year. That's what we're subsidizing through insurance costs, etc. So whenever we look at taxing tobacco, I'm big on taxing it as much as we can. So in this case, you look at the fiscal note, we're reducing our revenues by $181,000 a year by making this change to cigars. So I'm definitely a no vote on this issue. Thank you.
Senator Scott.
Madam Chairman, it was said in debate that the demographic here that smokes these things is 35 years and older generally. Now that's a pretty low level of age, but still, Madam Chairman, older lives do matter on and against the bill.
Senate Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, in general, I support the bill, but I'm going to be a no vote. And so I wanted to explain that. And the reason is, and based on the debate yesterday, and I will send these out, there's been a number of Attorney General's opinions over the year. In 1986, there was an AG's opinion that basically said, yeah, these are revenue raising or revenue decreasing bills that would have to reside in the House. That opinion was later reversed by another Attorney General in 2009 and says, no, it can reside in the Senate. And then I have an LSO opinion recently that says, even if you decrease revenue, it could be inferred under our Constitution. Now, it's never been tested before the Supreme Court. That in fact, even though it decreases revenue, it is still a revenue, quote, bill. And so under an abundance of caution, while I certainly support the idea of lowering and broadening the sales tax, again, under the concept that this bill contemplates, I am fully supportive of that. But given an abundance of caution based on what we have in the discussion we had yesterday, I'm going to be a no vote. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Further discussion? I sense maybe we're ready for a vote. Okay, all those in favor of Senator Beitman's motion that when the chairman of the whole rises to report that do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 42, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no? No. Ooh. Let's go with the division. I'm not completely sure, so, let's see. All those in favor, please rise. All those opposed? The same? Yes. Do I need to say it out loud? Okay. All right, it looks like the vote is 15 yes, 14 no. Senate File 42 has passed Committee of the Whole. Next bill for our consideration is Senate File 63. Yes. Yes, you may.
Madam Chairman, I do think that it is this body that determines constitutional on any issue. I'll think if it's important, everybody has all the available information so you can make an informed decision. And so to that end, Madam Chairman, what I will do this weekend, I will send all of the Attorney General opinions that I have collected over the years, all the LSO opinions out, and the memo that LSO has routinely sent out. And then you can look at that stuff and you can make a determination and hopefully have an informed decision on what constitutes the constitutionality of these issues. And I think that's probably right and proper. And so this weekend, I'll forward that out to everybody on the Senate, and you can look at all that stuff for yourself and make a determination moving forward. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
All right, let's go ahead with Senate File 63. Will the reading clerk read the bill?
Senate File 63, Tax Administration Revisions, an act relating to taxation and revenue, sponsored by the Revenue Committee. It was referred to Committee Number 3, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Beitman, French, Ide, McEwen, and Pappas. Senator Beitman, Chairman.
Okay, you've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Beitman?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 63. Ladies and gentlemen, this bill came to us as a Revenue Committee bill. And since most of the committee was brand new, we had the Department of Revenue present the bill. And the Department of Revenue did a great job of explaining what the ask was for and the idea for this bill. It was to ensure consistent administration of taxes. The agency asked the legislature to incorporate language from sales use tax statutes and mineral tax and vice versa. Starting on page 2, line 10, verbiage added comes from 3915-108B3 in sales tax and adds it to mineral tax. The intent is to clarify that the agency has the authority to credit or waive interest imposed on severance tax. We have said, they have the authority for sales and use tax now. And so as you go through on page 2, you'll see the same language. The department may credit or waive any interest imposed by this subsection as a part of a settlement or for any other good cause. You'll see that in all these different sections. So if you look at line 6, 3414-108, that deals with coal. Go on down to 208, that's oil and gas. 308 deals with Trona. Flip over to page 3. Section 408 deals with bentonite. 508 deals with uranium. 608 at the bottom of page 3 deals with sand and gravel. Flip over to page 4, same language. 708 deals with other valuable deposits. flip over to page 5, line 1. This language was taken from Mineral Statute 3914-108B-5E and added to sales and use tax. Clarifies the timeline for issuing any assessment or levy, including penalty and interest, if any, resulting from final audit findings. The requirement exists in mineral statutes now. So that's the information we were given. It's a pretty straightforward bill. It's effective July 1st, 2023. The committee and I will do our very best, Madam Chairman, to answer any questions, but we're new. Thank you.
Questions on the bill? Would you like to have the
Oh, we
amendment
do
read
have a
in?
standing committee.
Yeah, there is.
Okay,
Would you like
let's
that read
go
in
back
now?
to that. Yes, please.
Senate File 63, Standing Committee Amendment number 1, page 2, line 11, after.
Senator Beitman?
I move Senate Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to Senate File 63. And explaining to you, it came up in committee that it would be better to clarify we're talking about just severance tax. So that's what this amendment does. And it adds language on severance tax, so it's abundantly clear that this only pertains to severance tax.
Question? Okay, all those in favor of Senator Beitman's motion, Standing Committee motion to adopt Standing Committee number 1 to Senate File 63, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say the same. Okay, the amendment has been passed, adopted, excuse me. Back on the bill. Any discussion on the bill? Okay. All right. All those in favor of Senator Beitman's motion that when the chairman of the whole rises to report, that do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 63, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no? Okay, Senate File 63 has passed the chairman of the whole. Next bill for our consideration is Senate File 47.
Senate File 47, Education Repeal of Immunity for Corporal Discipline, sponsored by the Education Committee, an act relating to K-12 education. Was referred to Committee number 4, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Beitman, Brennan, Rothfuss, Scott, and Steinmetz. Senator Scott, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Scott?
Madam Chairman, I move that when the Committee of the Whole rise and report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 47 do pass. And to explain this good little Senate file, I yield to Senator Beitman.
Senator Beitman?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Getting my money, you guys are getting your money's worth out of me today, so I promise I'll keep this quick. This Senate File 47 came to me from my good principal up in Ranchester. He did a lot of research on this through his PhD work, and it is a passion of his, and it's actually a cleanup of some pretty antiquated laws we have on the books. Most school districts, I believe, I had it written down somewhere on my notes. There's only 3 out of 48 school districts that actually still do have corporal discipline in their policies. They don't necessarily act on it. I don't think there's been a case, we heard in testimony, there hasn't been a case of corporal discipline being done in the last 20 years in Wyoming. When he brought this to the attention of these other school districts that still have it on the books, they were surprised that it was still there, and they're working to adjust their policies. What we're doing here on line 10 is just repealing the language that provides immunity for corporal discipline. So in effect, what this does is if one of these districts that has this on their books, child comes home from school all bruised up, and the parent finds out, wow, what happened to you today? Well, principal or a teacher or somebody in the school whooped me pretty good. That would remove the liability protection, and the parent could bring a civil action or a criminal action in that case. Some of the testimony we've heard in the past during interim was, what about a fight? What if the principal's trying to break up a fight? Would this tangle somebody into this this mess? And it's pretty obvious that The answer is no, because when you're disciplining a kid with corporal discipline, the intent is to use pain to change their behavior, right? When you're breaking up a fight, you're trying to prevent somebody from getting hurt, and you're either acting in self-defense for yourself or you're acting in defense of a helpless minor who's getting pummeled at the time. So there's a big difference there. So I think that's kind of a moot point. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it. It's a pretty straightforward bill, but there may be some questions, and I'd be happy to answer them, or the committee could help me out. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
Discussion? Anyone? Question? Okay. All those in favor of Senator Beitman's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do with favorable recommendation of Senate File 47, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Okay. Senate File 47 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 009. Would you like to read that?
Senate File 9, Medicaid Coverage Licensed Pharmacists, sponsored by Senator Baldwin, an act relating to the Medical Assistance and Services Act, was referred to Committee Number 10, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Barlow, Dockstader. No, Senator Hutchings. Excused, Senator Bouchard. Senator Baldwin, Chairman.
For the reading of the bill, what is your pleasure, Senator Baldwin?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Excuse me. I move when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 9, Medicaid Coverage Licensed Pharmacists, do pass. And for explanation of this bill, I'll talk to myself and to you. This is a bill that I brought at the request of several of the pharmacists, and this bill has been before this committee before. What the precept and the concept of this entire bill is that on the Medicaid registry, specific entities are recognized as providers. Insurance companies then take that registry of Medicaid-approved providers to decide whether they're going to reimburse said provider for whatever services. At this point, pharmacists are not on that list, as is another entity we'll talk about in a few minutes. Pharmacists increasingly do more services. At this point, they do things since the pandemic of immunizations, testing for things. It's something that they never used to do. And at this point, they're not reimbursed for those things by the insurance companies nor by Medicaid. The intent of this bill is to place them in that registry so that, number one, Medicaid can reimburse them, and more importantly, or as importantly, that the private insurance companies will then recognize them and reimburse them for those procedures. The danger of not putting them on there is that eventually these facilities, these pharmacists, will probably stop doing these services, which is becoming more and more common throughout Wyoming, throughout the United States, or I assume the world. It's become more and more available as pharmacists use their education to do these immunizations, to educate the patients that they're doing it more. But as the cost of the immunizations and the cost of drugs go up further and they're not reimbursed, you may see some of these pharmacists actually seizing these services, which puts more pressure back on the other providers, on hospitals, clinics, et cetera. So the whole intent of this bill is to get those pharmacists on this list so that we can get them reimbursed for those services. And with that simple explanation on a very lengthy bill, I sit for questions.
Discussion? Senator Hutchings?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to explain my no vote. I am totally and entirely in support of our local pharmacists, as you'll see later with some bills that will be coming through here. My sole objection to this bill and the next one that's coming up is the expansion onto Medicaid. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Brennan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like clarification. By adding these pharmacists, would these services, are they now being covered by certain providers? Like if we went to a physician, they would get covered, but if a pharmacist provides them, then they do not get covered currently?
Senator Baldwin?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I excuse my voice. The fact is they're being covered by very few insurance companies, are being covered by very few entities. Most of these services are being provided for free. They're being provided, they're not being reimbursed at all for things. And I use as the example, doing immunizations such as flu shots, et cetera. And at this point, they're not being reimbursed. They're doing it, I would say, out of the kindness of their hearts, but I know some pharmacists that aren't so kind of heart. But the point being that they're not being reimbursed by almost anybody. So this would make it so they will be reimbursed once that insurance company recognizes that they're on the list. Hopefully I'd answered the question. Nope, she's shaking her head no. So I'll ask for clarification.
Senator Brennan?
I guess my question is, if you go and get an immunization at the doctor's office and it is prescribed by administered by a nurse, do they get reimbursement currently for these?
I think Senator Baldwin has an answer. Senator Baldwin?
Gotcha. I understand better. I lost my voice and my brain there shortly. But the fact is, yes, they are being reimbursed in the doctor's office, in a clinic. That is being reimbursed. It's being reimbursed as various things, procedure codes, what they would just call an immunization fee or an injection fee. That's one of the examples. And the other example would be some of the coaching or some of the education about medications that pharmacists do that happens in a provider's office. Sometimes takes 20, 30, sometimes longer minutes, and that is also reimbursable in the doctor's office. The pharmacist can, at this point, be reimbursed for that. I got the question that time. Thank you.
Senator Hicks?
Madam Chairman, I understand the reimbursement part, but this is the question that I'm trying to grapple with here is, so if I want to go get a vaccination and I have to schedule a doctor's appointment to do that, and I go into the doctor's office and it's a simple routine vaccination that could be done, the doctor gets reimbursed for Medicaid, and they probably, it's been my experience, charge a much higher rate than a pharmacist does. So, but if we did this, and then I went to the pharmacist, and then they're eligible for reimbursement, is the reimbursement rate exactly the same? Or is it based on the rate that the pharmacist would charge, which in high probability is going to be lower than what if you had to schedule this for a doctor? But if I could get an explanation of if that's, number one, how it works, and then what's the potential cost reduction, or is it the cost equal regardless of where I get the vaccination?
Senator Kolb?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a pretty straightforward question. Are pharmacists doctors? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Baldwin?
We'll do that in reverse order. We'll do that. Pharmacists do have a doctorate degree. They are not medical doctors, but they do have a doctorate degree. So that answers the first question. The second question is, what is the rate of reimbursement? That would depend across the board. Just as if you go to my office to get an immunization versus another doctor or whoever for a reimbursement, it will probably be a different charge. If you go to a community health service or to a community clinic, it may likely be cheaper. I can't tell you what the pharmacist will charge. I would guess it will be lower, but I can't guarantee that, because typically in a doctor's office or in a provider's office, you're going to have to make, number one, the appointment to be seen, like immunization for children. You're going to have to be seen, have that appointment to be seen. You're being charged for the office visit plus the immunizations. So likely the office charge is higher than it would be at the pharmacist. And I would add to that, in the statutes, in a separate statute, it's not in this one, but it talks about the Practice Act of pharmacists, and this in no way affects that Practice Act. There you charge exactly the same for the medicine, what they charge the patient, what they charge the client. The one pharmacist will be very one.
Sorry about the technical difficulties. I think we're back up and running though. Majority Floor Leader Hicks?
Madam Chairman, I share my colleague from Laramie County's concern about potentially expanding the Medicaid. But what I see here is an opportunity to tear down fences. And we have a long-standing tradition, at least in this body, to try to pull down as many fences as possible. And there's a reason for that, Madam Chairman. Competition drives prices down. The more people that are competing drives prices down. And so I'm willing to go out on a limb here and support this because I think by providing more opportunities and more competition will help drive prices down. So, Madam Chairman, on and for the bill.
Further discussion? Okay. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Baldwin's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 9, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no? No. I think that has passed. Senate File 9 has passed the Committee of the Whole. Next bill for our consideration is Senate File 74. Will the reading clerk read the bill?
Senate File 74, Slow-Moving Vehicles Amendments, sponsored by the Agriculture Committee, an act relating to motor vehicles, was referred to Committee Number 5, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators French, Hicks, Kolb, and Steinmetz. No, Senator Ide. Senator Steinmetz, Chairman.
For the reading of the bill, what is your pleasure, Senator Steinmetz?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with a recommendation that Senate File 74 do pass. There is an amendment, but before I have that read in or move that, I will let the good Senator Ide explain the bill.
Senator Ide?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just read you the summary here and then stand for questions. This bill requires that a farm tractor, unit of equipment, or farm implement that is designed to operate at speeds in excess of 25 miles per hour must display a slow-moving vehicle emblem and a speed identification symbol. Any combination of a farm tractor, unit of equipment, or farm implement that can operate at speeds in excess of 25 miles per hour is limited to travel at the lowest speed indicated by a speed identification symbol on any portion or the combination. So just to maybe cut to the chase on that long definition, right now, everybody that understands agriculture equipment and grew up in a ranch or a farm, you have the triangle. We always called it the SMV sign, slow moving vehicle sign. And right now the law is that if you travel faster than 25 miles per hour with that sign on your tractor or your equipment, or could be a self-propelled swather for that matter, you can be fined for traveling faster than 25 miles per hour. So in the committee yesterday, we had some law enforcement there. I asked them if they'd ever given any tickets to farmers for traveling too fast, and at least here locally, they haven't. So this new sign is called an SIS sign. It stands for Speed Identification Symbol. That's what's kind of the way things are going with farm equipment. So you can, with the newer equipment, it does travel a lot faster, and you have to have that other sign on there as well as the SMV sign to show, so you don't get a ticket effectively if you're going faster than 25 miles an hour. So I'll stand for questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Beitman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So will this result in more or less speeding tickets? Because that'll determine my vote on this bill. Thank you.
Senator Barlow?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I guess now I'm even maybe more confused. We have two signs. We now have two symbols if we're going too fast. What about the actual slow-moving vehicles? Do they not have to have any symbol? Madam Chairman, thank you.
Senator Pappas?
Madam Chairman, I'd like to know from the committee if they heard testimony from the ag community. I mean, it seems like we're putting more requirements upon them. What are they saying?
Senator French?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Being a farmer, I have been in the business 48 years. Much of my equipment is older equipment. It wasn't designed to go very fast. They don't go very fast. So that slow moving sign, triangle, that alerts anybody coming up on you from behind that, hey, this tractor doesn't go very fast. The modern tractors, they're designed to move right along. I mean, they potentially 40 miles an hour. So to me, this is a safety issue. It's just trying to warn the public that's coming up behind that vehicle, that tractor, and that this thing can go faster. It will go faster. And these new modern swathers, $150,000, you get it on the highway, they flat move out, and as a safety issue, they're not on the highway as long, they're on there for less amount of time, moving from field to field. No farmer likes to get on a highway, a busy highway going from field to field. It's dangerous. We don't like it because a lot of the drivers are inattentive. Maybe they're texting or they're on the phone talking, and all of a sudden, there's a tractor right in the face. So this is a safety issue. These modern tractors, they're maybe $250,000, $350,000. Those tractors, when they come out of the manufacturing plant, like the green or the red one or whatever you choose, those manufacturers have all kinds of bells and whistles on there to try to warn the public. You hit the hazard in your tractor, all the lights and everything, trying to warn the public. So this is a safety issue, in my opinion. I know I have one piece of equipment that I use on the farm that's, tillage equipment that's 30 foot wide. And it folds up. Well, if I have to get on the highway, I plug it in to the tractor, the outlet, and all the blinking lights come on to try to warn the public. So to me, it's a safety issue.
Senator Scott?
Madam Chair, I guess I qualify as a poor farmer. My most modern tractor, I don't think will go 25 miles an hour. I know my swather won't. Madam Chairman, I have difficulty with this bill. I've never heard of, let alone seen, that I knew of, one of these other symbols. I think I speculatively, I'm like most motorists, what is that? And what I'm afraid is, with all these symbols and whatnot, we're just going to confuse the public, and it won't produce extra safety. I really do, Madam Chairman, question the need for this bill.
Senator Ride?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to address a few of the questions in here. I explained my no vote on the committee yesterday for a lot of the reasons that the good senator just mentioned as well. I looked around, I couldn't even find where you could buy a SIS sign, number one. I think they come directly from the manufacturer on the new equipment. And to answer the good senator from Campbell County's question, I think the question was, do the old equipment still have to have the slow-moving vehicle signs on it?
tell me if that's not right, but they do continue to have to. I believe that's federal law on the SMV signs. Don't hold me to that, but in some of these states, I looked around, there's maybe half a dozen states that I could find that are trying to move this stuff into their states. One of the other reasons I had a problem with this bill, and we're making an amendment to it, was this, the standards are coming from the American Society of Agriculture and Biological Engineers, and vetted them a little bit too, and that organization is kind of tied into the UN and with globalism, and that was a little detraction for me on that. So if there's any other questions, good senator in front of me might be able to answer a few of them too.
Any others? Oh, never mind. Oh, sorry, didn't see you over there, my bad. Senator Larson. Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This bill was put forth to help modernization of our existing laws. So currently it caps 25 miles an hour, and yes, you still have to keep a slow-moving vehicle sign on said vehicle. That won't change. What this does is allow the new, more modern implements to travel at a faster speed. And with that, the identification really aids highway patrol, because then they know how fast you can really go. Probably not so much the public until you come up upon them. But obviously, when you travel faster, the catching of the said vehicle that you're coming up behind is going to become slower. So you'll have more time to react. So in fact, it is a safety issue. I think it will help the people, especially on our highways, that travel at a high rate of speed. So the convergence of those two vehicles is slowed because of the speed of the first slower vehicles fast. So I think it does help in that respect. It gets them on and off the road quicker. They're not on the road, so the hazard is, present for a shorter period of time. And this was brought about because of the new vehicles that are out there. And obviously, I'm not going to shell out $150,000 or $200,000 for a new implement that does all these things, but they are out there. This is a way to modernize what the implements, the motorized vehicles can do, and to help people out to make it safer and more efficient for the person doing the agriculture work, and plus the general public. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Oh, never mind. Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I guess I'm still struggling to see the need for this. To me, the ultimate speed identification symbol is the tractor or swather itself. You're driving down the road, you see a tractor, you slow down. You know they're moving a little slower than you are, and you go around them, everything's good. I think if we're trying to get at the speed limit thing, why wouldn't you just get rid of the fine altogether for a tractor going 26 miles an hour instead of 25 miles an hour, and then that's a really easy bill. So I just can't get there unless somebody has a better argument. I'm probably against the bill. Thank you.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just said somebody who might be contained within that
that sign that, I prefer the signage that makes sure that, 99% of the traveling public can use that common sense. It's that 1% I'm kind of worried about, that maybe hasn't seen a tractor on a highway before. So I think, like it's been said before, this is very much a safety issue. I would appreciate, just that extra little bit of communication with the traveling public so that there's no surprises out there. And I think it's, like I said, I'm sure 99% of the population shares the responsible driving habits of my colleague from up north, but I'm just worried about that one that doesn't, because that's all it takes.
Senator Steinmetz?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll see if I can answer some of these questions. First of all, I kind of see this as a mobile speed limit sign. You kind of know how fast this vehicle is going when you come up on it. So if you go into your bill on page 2, you can see that this is only for every farm tractor and self-propelled unit of farm equipment or implement of husbandry, and we're going to amend some of that, operated after July 1st, 2023. So it's all the new equipment coming out that can go faster. And what we're basically doing is recognizing what the manufacturers are doing. So all of this equipment comes out with this symbol on the equipment. And so we're saying, this is what it is. So when the highway patrol comes up and they see that, they know, okay, this vehicle can go that fast. I don't need to pull them over. They'll still have the triangle that we're all aware of because that's been on there forever. Since I was a little kid, I've seen that triangle on our farm equipment. And so that'll still be there, but then this alerts the highway patrol, look, this vehicle can travel in excess of the 25 miles an hour. You don't need to pull them over. You don't need to give them a ticket. And if you're the traveling public, still be careful. They're not going as fast as you are. And so that's what this bill does. To the good Senator Pappas's question, all the industry groups did support it. Everyone was there testifying in favor of the bill. The Highway Patrol was there testifying in favor of the bill. And so that is just a little information for a background for you of what we saw in committee last night. So I hope that helps out. And when we're done with discussion, I will go ahead and move that, have that amendment read in and move it when you're ready, Madam Chairman.
Is there any other discussion on the bill before we, okay, hang on. Senator Landon?
Madam Chairman, thank you. And I don't mean to belabor, I'm trying really hard to get to this bill. Paragraph K, I just wanted to ask a question. As I read that paragraph, does that mean that every one of our stock trailers is going to have a slow moving sign on it? It seems to me that if I'm pulling a horse trailer, now do I have to put the triangle on it? Just a question.
I think Senator Steinmetz might have, oh wait, hang on. Can I go to Senator Steinmetz and then I'll come back to you, Senator Bartle?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. No, if you read statute around these areas, you will see that that vehicle can go faster than 25 miles an hour and is limited. It's by the manufacturer, it can go faster than that. So many of our farm implements, especially the older ones that everyone's been talking about today, are not designed to go 50 miles an hour or even 25 miles an hour. I mean, you're lucky if you're going 8 through the field with a lot of them. But some of our sprayers that have the great big tires and the big booms that travel from farm to farm and spray the weeds, those go pretty fast, and they don't have to stay in the row like all the other farm equipment, and they can zoom around. They look really fun to drive. I'd like to try it sometime. And so those types of vehicles are what we're talking about, as well as some of the more modern tractors that can go a lot faster than our older ones. And so that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about pickups and horse trailers, or we're talking about farm implements, implements of husbandry. It's, it is not stock trailers and pickups and trailers.
Senator McEwen?
So what happens if I have the new high-fangled sign and I've turbocharged my tractor, but I'm driving less than 40 miles an hour? If it's truly a safety issue, doesn't the other motorist still have to pay attention? Thank you, Madam Chairman. Or if I'm below 40 with the sign, is that a ticketable offense for driving too slow?
Senator Anderson?
Madam Chairman, those slow-moving triangles also apply to rubber-tired construction equipment. And I think you're exempting them entirely in this bill, so maybe they won't have a fast-moving requirement, but they do exceed that 25 mile an hour many times. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the bill? Senator Barlow?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I want to go back. I think we're leaving a gap in the bill. So page 2 of the bill, subsection G. Current statute says you can't display it if you're going in excess of 25 or on a stationary object. That's a good thing, probably. We're striking that. So now we're saying in language below, these are required only if you're going over 25. So I guess my question is where do we deal with those that are going less than 25 miles an hour? And my point is line 15, just in one on this section on this page, line 15, design operations in excess of 25 miles per hour shall display. So apparently, maybe this is a deregulation for anybody that's slow. Thank you.
Senator Steinmetz, would you like to go
Thank
ahead
you.
and read in the amendment, or do we need more discussion?
Madam Chairman, I will answer that question and then we'll read in the amendment. To the good senator that just raised that question, there is more statute that is not in this bill. It's in E and F where the slow-moving vehicles are still regulated, and that is confined there. If you have any further questions, we can have a sidebar, but I think that answers your question. If not, I'd be glad to get with you after our discussion on this bill. With that, I'd ask that the Standing Committee Amendment number 1 be read into Senate File 74.
Senate File 74, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 2, line 13, delete.
And now I would move Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to Senate File 74 and ask for your favorable consideration. Fellow senators, we're just making this a little bit more compatible for the construction industry and with terms that we use. So we're just taking out special mobile equipment in both places where it is contained in this bill. Not a huge amendment, doesn't change anything that the bill does. So if there are no questions, I would ask for an aye vote on the amendment.
You ready for the question on the amendment? Okay. All those in favor of Senator Steinmetz's motion to adopt the Standing Committee number 1 to Senate File 74, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Okay, the Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to Senate File 74 has been adopted. Back on the bill. Any other discussion on the bill? Senator Kolb.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to discuss briefly about a question that came up. I would like to characterize it as if my banana could do 45 miles an hour and I chose to drive my banana, farm implement equipment, at a slower speed, I have that right. That's clearly available there. You're not forced to drive at the full speed with my banana. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think there's a lot of words on the bill that's maybe confusing people. If you look at the new tractors, they have a speed symbol on them, and that's as per manufacturer. That's all this bill does. says the police can look at the back of that tractor, see the manufacturer's symbol on the tractor. I think that one way we could clarify this is by taking a picture of the photograph and maybe distributing it tomorrow. I recommend we pass this bill, then we can look at this picture tomorrow, that we pass out, and everybody will get an idea of what we're looking at here. Thank you.
Ready for the question? Okay. All those in favor of Senator Steinmetz's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that it do so with the favorable recommendation of Senate File 74, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Okay, I believe that Senate File 74 has passed the Committee of the Whole. Next bill for our consideration is Senate File 7. Will the reading clerk please read in the bill? Oh, hang on. Did you ask for privilege of the floor? Hang on just a sec. You may have it. Oh, sorry.
Thank you,
Gotta
Madam
do that
Chair.
little green thing, sorry.
No problem, no problem. I just can't help but notice, I think that was the good senator from Turner County's first bill, and just wanted to congratulate him and thank you.
All right, reading clerk, let's move on to Senate File 7. Would you please read that?
Senate File 7, Definition of Opiate Antagonist Amendment, sponsored by Senator Baldwin, an act relating to public health and safety, was referred to Committee Number 10, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Barlow, Dockstader, and Hutching. Excused, Senator Bouchard. Senator Baldwin, Chairman.
For the reading of the bill, what is your pleasure, Senator Baldwin?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that when a committee of the whole rises to report or do so with a favorable recommendation on Senate File 7, definition of opioid antagonist amendment. Once again, I'll refer to myself to do this bill. This is a really simple bill. If you look through, again, reading this very lengthy bill, it's almost one page. This bill is very simple. We passed some legislation in here a couple of years, 2, 3, I don't remember exactly, my memory's shot. We passed a bill about Narcan, naloxone. It's a drug, it's an antagonist, an opioid antagonist. In light of the conversation this morning concerning fentanyl, and in light of the increasing opioid overdose epidemic, becomes more and more important. As a matter of fact, just yesterday, the DEA passed some new regulations about opioid antagonists and opioids themselves. It's a changing field. When we passed this originally, we talked about that one molecule drug simply, the Narcan, the naloxone. And that's the only drug that we put into statute. Since then, there's been changes. FDA has approved another drug. It's an opioid antagonist that does the same thing, perhaps a little better than the Narcan does. Unfortunately, right now, that is not included under our statutes. So when someone goes to the pharmacy to get it, or when a hospital needs that drug, it is not now covered. There's some legislation being considered, and actually in other states and federally, about the pharmacist being able to do this without a prescription. As the opioid epidemic has become such a problem. I've had more questions this session than I've ever had about fentanyl. People that don't know what fentanyl is, don't know what we use it for, don't know the effect. And as another good senator and I were speaking yesterday, fentanyl is a very common product that we use in the hospitals, we use in the ERs, we use in the back of an ambulance. It's very common, and I don't think that everybody understands that. Unfortunately, as with most things, a good thing becomes misused by those who have other intentions, and it becomes a bad thing. That doesn't make fentanyl a bad drug. It doesn't make oxycodone a bad drug. They all have their uses. But the point is there's more and more people dying from opioid overdose than there ever have been. Almost weekly, at least monthly, the statistics increase and people are dying. I bet everybody in this room knows somebody that's died or come close to dying from an opioid overdose. It's a big deal. So the importance of this bill is to include other molecules, include other products. We opened it up. And all the senators that have been around for a while know that sometimes we describe a product and we describe it narrowly. And then we have to come back in successive years and open that up further. The one that comes to mind is marijuana. You know, there's other products, synthetic marijuana, and we've had to extend those bills out. The intent of this bill is to open that up so that as other products become available, as other mechanisms or devices, as this says, be it a nasal inhaler, be it whatever, as they come out, that they now will be legal They now will be available as as the world changes, and the world changes daily. So it's a very simple bill. It just opens up the description of opioid antagonist. We're becoming more, there's more in development now. Let's open it up and get them out. And hopefully the opioid epidemic, the opioid overdose epidemic ends sometime soon. I don't anticipate that. I think it will eventually, but let's work with it while we have it now. So I would encourage you to pass this bill.
Discussion on the bill? We need to have an amendment read in first before we can move on. Could you do that, Senator Baldwin? Or, I mean, move it. We've had it read in, right?
Go ahead, read it.
Have we had it? Oh, let's have that read in, please.
Senate File 7, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 2, line 7, delete.
Go ahead, Senator Baldwin.
I'd like to move that amendment, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 7. Simple, it's just a change of the effective date. Again, this is an important bill. It's an important thing. This is a simple rule change. Department of Pharmacy assured us that this can be taken almost immediately, and that's a big deal. People are dying right now. While we're all sitting here, somebody's dying of an opioid overdose. So let's make it effective immediately and get it taken care of as soon as we can. With that, I would encourage your aye vote on the amendment.
Any discussion on the amendment? Okay, the question's been called on the amendment. All those in favor of Senator Baldwin's motion to adopt Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 7, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Okay, Standing Committee Number 1 has been adopted to Senate File 7. Back on the bill? Any discussion on the bill? Question? Question is being called. All those in favor of Senator Baldwin's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with the favorable recommendation of Senate File 7, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Okay. Senate File 7 has passed the Committee of the Whole. Do we have one more bill? I don't think I have it yet. Oh, okay. Well, okay, super. I love that. I guess we just need to have the president. Oh, Majority Floor Leader. There we go. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Chairman, I move the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Okay, that motion is passed. I guess new president will be coming. Get this out of your road here.
Okay.
Yeah, he needs, reading clerk, read the report.
Mr. President, your Committee of the Whole, having had under considerations bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. Senate File 42, do pass amended. Senate File 63, do pass amended. Senate File 47, do pass. Senate File 9, do pass. Senate File 74, do pass amended. Senate File 7, do pass amended. Senator Schuler, Chairman.
Senator Schuler.
Mr. President, I move for the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report.
For the motion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Okay, motion is passed. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, that clears the desk. Oh, we have a president.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introduction of bills. Senate File 17, first reading of the bill.
Senate File 17, Off-Road Recreational Vehicles, Safety and Insurance, sponsored by the Transportation Committee.
Senate File 17 is referred to Committee Number 8, Transportation. Senate File 80, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 80, Visitation Rights, sponsored by Senator McEwen.
Senate File 80 is referred to Committee Number 10, Labor Health. Senate File 12, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 12, Tavern and Entertainment Liquor License, sponsored by the Corporations Committee.
Senate File 12 is referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Senate File 64, first reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 64, Malt Beverage Manufacturer Amendments, sponsored by Senator Nethercott.
Senate File 64 is referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, that clears the desk.
Mr. President, I move that we stand in recess until 10 a.m. on January 16th.
Adjournment, please.
Mr. Chairman, I stand. Mr. Chairman, I move that we stand adjourned until 10 a.m. January 16th.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Are there any announcements? Senator Scott.
Mr. President, your Committee Number 4 on Education will meet 8 a.m. on Monday morning on room W110 downstairs. We'll start with Senate File 51, School Finance Regional Cost Adjustment that we laid back for amendment this morning. And we will take further public testimony on that if there is any. And then would be Senate File 83, K-12 School Facility Leasing, and Senate File 84, Education Model Student Attendance Policies.
Thank you. Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee Number 9, Minerals, will be meeting shortly from now upon noon recess in Room 4, Capital Extension, and online to hear Senate File 95, Moon Landing Day.
Thank you, Mr. President Dockstader. Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee Number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, will meet at 8 a.m. Monday, January 16th in Capitol Extension Room 6 and online to hear 3 bills. Senate File 10, Licensed Professional Counselor Compact, Senate File 26, Psychology Interjurisdictional Compact, and Senate File 8, Essential Subsidy Payments to Behavioral Health Centers.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The committee, Senate Committee Number 6, TRW Committee, even though we're not going to meet till Tuesday, I want to get a heads up. We'll be taking a look at Senate File 56, prohibiting travel across private land for hunting purposes, and Senate File 88, hunting licenses weighted bonus point system. Thank you.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Highway Transportation and Military Affairs Committee will meet today upon adjournment, so let's say at 1 o'clock this afternoon in Capitol Extension Room W2 and online to consider Senate File 14, Wyoming National Guard Professional Malpractice Liability, Senate File 15, Military Leave for State Employees, Senate File 53, Wyoming National Guard Medical Insurance Premiums. Additionally, we will meet upon adjournment on Monday, January 16th in Capitol Extension Room W2 and online to consider the following bills. Senate File 21, High Occupancy Vehicle Lanes, Senate File 22, Wyoming Public Safety Communication System Funding, and Senate File 35, School Crosswalks and Pedestrian Crossings Appropriation.
Senator Landon, almost last but not least.
Thank
Committee
you.
Number 1.
Really appreciate that, Mr. President. Your Committee 1 Judiciary will meet on Monday morning at 8 a.m. in Capitol Extension W4. This heads up to the committee. Senate File 34, Trespass by Small Unmanned Aircraft, will be held over to Wednesday, January 18th. We'll finish up some testimony. We're going to work that bill a little bit. On Monday morning, we will take up Senate File 25, District and Prosecuting Attorneys, Bar License Requirement. Senate File 31, Adjacent Land Resource Data Trespass Repeal. Senate File 55, Chancery Court Vacancies Extension Amendment. Senate File 69, electronic records retention, and Senate File 99, if time permits, witnessing of wills, remote methods. We'll have a busy week next week, Mr. President, as we try to catch up on judiciary. Thank you very much.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, will meet Tuesday, January 17th upon adjournment in Capitol Extension Room 2 and online to consider the following bills. Senate File 27, Weed and Pest Mitigation Tribal Inclusion. Senate File 28, Livestock Infectious Disease Control Tribal Inclusion. Senate File 68, Prescriptive Easement for Water Conveyances, which was held over from our last meeting. Senate File 96, Omnibus Water Bill Planning and Administration. Senate File 82, Eligible Water and Sewer Projects Funding, if time permits. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Chairman Steinmetz. And a huge thank you to all you. I'll tell you what, we've been a well-oiled machine this week. Lots of bills got read in. First, third reading bills came out today. Thank all of you. You know, we've been pretty flawless. It's been a good week, and we're off. And thanks to Majority Floor Leader, we're going to actually be able to get home for the weekend. It's Friday the 13th. Drive careful, be careful. Everybody enjoy, and as you can see, the committees are loaded up next week. We've got a pretty good run, and looking at down here at Ellen and the staff, thank all of you for everything you guys have done. It's been a good week, and everybody's worked well together. I'm pretty proud of everybody. You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Senate shall stand recessed until 10 a.m., January 16th. Have a great weekend.